Good evening and welcome to Mrs. Bowles and Mr. Eckerman's Chapter 15 review, The Renaissance and Reformation. I hope this will be of some help to you. In the following review for Chapter 15 test, we will review the essential vocabulary and the main concepts for each subchapter. The vocabulary will be reviewed first and the main concepts second. People throughout the world still marvel at his mural, The Last Supper. Perhaps his most famous painting is the portrait called the Mona Lisa. In this slide, I've included Leonardo da Vinci's self-portrait and the Last Supper and his most famous painting, or probably his most famous painting, Mona Lisa. Humanists, people who specialize in studying the humanities, which includes grammar, history, poetry, and rhetoric, and is used in the classical education tradition of ancient Greece and Rome. Niccolo Machiavelli, a Florentine diplomat and historian, lived from 1469 to 1527. In 1513, he wrote the essay The Prince. He argued that a ruler should be concerned only with power and political success. The end justifies the means. Today, some people refer to ruthless behavior to get ahead as Machiavellian. Michelangelo lived from 1475 to 1564. Michelangelo was a brilliant painter. Millions of people have visited the Sistine Chapel of the Vatican, the residence of the Pope in Rome, to view the frescoes Michelangelo painted on the chapel ceiling. His sculptures of biblical figures such as David also continue to be admired. In addition to his art, Michelangelo wrote poetry and helped design St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. In this slide, I've included two of Michelangelo's works. The upper part of the statue David and the other statue called the Pieta, which is a picture of Mary holding Jesus after he was taken off the cross. The European invention of printing appears to have been independent of the Chinese process. Scholars believe that in about 1450, Johannes Gutenberg of Mainz, Germany, became the first European to use movable type to print books. Gutenberg used his printing press to print copies of the Bible. Thomas More, an English humanist and friend of Erasmus, took a similar view. Early in life, More showed an interest in the classics, and in 1516 he published Utopia. In this work, More condemned governments as corrupt and argued that private ownership of property causes unnecessary conflicts between people. He contrasted life in Europe with his description of an imaginary ideal society. The word utopia has come to mean an ideal place or society. In More's imaginary world, all male citizens were equal. Everyone worked to support the society. Reformation, religious revolution that split the church in Western Europe and created a number of new churches. This is a tree similar to the tree that Mr. Eckerman drew for you on the whiteboard. It kind of shows the branching of religious branches after the schism of the Catholic Church and after Martin Luther posted his 95 Theses on the church door. And you can see from there it branches many, many different ways. And now there are many different churches under the Christian religion. Martin Luther had quit law school and entered a monastery to spend his life in search of salvation. But Luther found that the church's methods for overcoming sin gave him no comfort no matter what he did. Luther developed beliefs that later became known as Lutheranism. Luther taught that people could receive salvation only through the grace of God not through their own actions. This idea was called justification by grace through faith. Indulgences, paid pardons from punishment for sin. Predestination, belief that at the beginning of time God decided who would be saved. Counter-reformation, attempt by the Catholic Church following the Reformation to return the Church to an emphasis on spiritual matters. Council of Trent, meeting of church leaders in the 1500s to clearly define Catholic doctrines for the Counter-Reformation. Jesuits, Catholic religious order founded by Ignatius de Loyola in 1534. Ignatius de Loyola founded the Jesuits in 1534. In 1540, Pope Paul III recognized the Jesuits as an official order of the Catholic Church. Loyola believed that salvation could be achieved in part by doing good deeds. His followers took vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience to the Pope. Almanacs, books that predict the weather and the prospects for growing crops, and also contain such things as calendars, maps, and medical advice. Standard of living, measure of the quality of life. The Italian humanists placed importance on human reason. There was an emphasis on education, living a meaningful life, and the arts like theater, fine art, literature, music, and dance. The Northern Europeans learned about the Italian Renaissance through trade and travel between southern and northern Italy as a result of the ability to travel along mountain passes in the Alps, as well as to use river travel. The printing press also allowed new ideas and information to travel quickly throughout Europe, as it never had before. Indulgences are the ability to buy forgiveness for sins. The Catholic Church sold indulgences in order to raise money to build St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Indulgences sold in Germany by a monk named Johann Tetzel outraged the northern humanists who wanted the church to be more spiritual than political. Martin Luther was one of Johann Tetzel's biggest critics. A side effect of the Reformation and Counter-Reformation was the renewed interest in education and the growth of universities as a result of this interest. The humanists, the church, and the Protestants all valued education as a way to build support for their views. The decline of traditional culture was brought about primarily due to the migration of peasants from the countryside to the cities. They gradually became more knowledgeable about how the world worked and became less dependent on superstitious beliefs. The Renaissance, or rebirth, was both a philosophical and artistic movement, and the era when that movement flourished. It was marked by a renewed interest in ancient Greek and Roman literature and life. Medieval scholars had studied ancient history and tried to bring everything they learned into harmony with Christian teachings. By contrast, Italian Renaissance scholars studied the ancient world to explore its great achievements. A new emphasis on the power of human reason developed, and many advances were made in the arts and sciences. In the early Renaissance of the 1300s, Italian scholars turned to classical Greek and Roman literature to study grammar, history, poetry, and rhetoric. These studies are called the humanities, and people who specialized in them were the humanists. Remember, you may make a study guide to use on the test that is one side of 1/2 piece of notebook paper, or 5 by 4 1/4 inches. Remember, study hard, eat your vegetables, get a good night's sleep, and good luck. We'll see you tomorrow.